Yeti. In the history of the natural world to the supernatural, I found many weird things. But just because I don't know what it is doesn't make it supernatural. While the true heart of science is to always question even yourself. In the end, I have become an objective atheist. I am an atheist, but I want there to be more. The Yeti, or the abominable snowman, is an ape-like entity taller than an average human, but is said to inhabit the Himalayan regions of Nepal, Bhutan, and Tibet. The names Yeti and Mehte are commonly used by the people indigenous to the region and are part of their history and mythology. Stories of the Yeti first emerged as a facet of Western popular culture in the 19th century. The scientific community has generally regarded the Yeti as a legend. Given the lack of conclusive evidence, in one genetic study, researchers matched DNA from hair samples found in the Himalayas with a prehistoric bear from the Pleistocene area. Epoch. Sounds like it could be a bear or a later descendant of prehistoric bear, possibly more bipedal than earlier bears, maybe to adjust to climbing. With multiple sightings and samples taken from 1899, with current reports still coming in, like the Bigfoot, it's the mass amount of evidence that brings it into a possibility. A few hoaxes do happen, but not all of them. In 2013, a call was put out by scientists from the universities of Oxford and Louisiana for people claiming to have samples from these sort of creatures. A mitochondrial DNA analysis of the 125 RNA genes was undertaken on samples of hair from an unidentified animal from Ladakh in northern India on the west of the Himalayas and one from Bhutan. Those samples were compared to those in the gene bank, an international repository of gene sequencing and matching, a sample from an adjacent polar bear jawbone found in Svalbard, Norway, that dates back between 40,000 and 120,000 years ago. The results suggested that, barring hoaxes of planting samples or contaminations, bears in that region may have taken to be Yetis. Professor of evolutionary genetics at the University of Cambridge, Bill Amos, doubted the samples were of polar bears in the Himalayas, but was 90% convinced that there is a bear in the region that has been mistaken for a Yeti. Professor Byron Sykes, whose team carried out the analysis of the samples at Oxford University, has his own theory. Now, you can go with the hair samples of the bear can go two ways. I've heard description of Yeti as if it was wearing something. Basic clothes, but what if it had a fur of a bear that was available? Or it could have been the bear. This kind of goes into similar Bigfoot searches. And these fall into a few categories. Misidentified wildlife, known or unknown. Ancient remnant human subspecies, or subrace I should say, as in the caveman. Gigantopithecus or other related primates, or the hoax. I do believe that there's something there once again, but what? And not everything that seems to fall under the definition of Bigfoot, or in this case the Yeti, but similar description, is not necessarily the same definition. I think the hoax would be difficult, if not dangerous, in those environments. So unlikely, but not impossible. Possible to increase tourism, except for the willingness of society, religion, and history to back it up. Next is Gigantopithecus, or Bigfoot-like undiscovered hominid. This one is possible, as Bigfoot, which to me stands about 50-50. Ancient, remnant, human race. If so, they would probably be the Denisovans, or from the Homo heidelbergensis, a super athlete gene that helped Sherpas and other Tibetans breathe easily on high altitudes, was inherited from an ancient species of human. The gene variant came from the people known as the Denisovans, who were extinct soon after they mated with the ancestors of Europeans and Asians around 40,000 years ago. This is another type of version of a gene acquired from interbreeding with another type of human has been shown to help modern humans adapt to their environment. As with the Neanderthal and the Homo sapiens, both the Neanderthal and the Denisovans were split-offs of the Homo heidelbergensis. While only Heidelbergensis was even close to the dimensions, it was still not quite there. It wasn't quite as large. But maybe with evolutionary's help, or neither of these still had heavy hair coats. But it could be clothes. Some stories, as I've said, have included them wearing caveman leather clothing. But this one seems a little less likely because of the terrain, but again, not impossible. Finally, we have misidentified animal, known or unknown. This one seemed to take more strength with me along as I've studied into this, and I hadn't seen this before. But just recently, with the multiples of samples coming in, bear comes up a lot, but not always. What kind, or occasionally, a sort of bear that could exist, or shouldn't be in that area. If you've seen a wet polar bear stand up, or seen some injured bears with front paws hurt, who adapt to a rear leg movement, as well as recently seen videos that was again thought to be a Bigfoot youth playing, but ended up being a bear cub with mange. And again, if you remember the Chupacabras videos, mange seems to be expanding as the environment is changing. The undiscovered or ancient believed extinct type of bear seems to have the most evidence, possibly a snub-nosed bear adapted for climbing, having longer limbs, etc. All I'm sure of is that something unknown is there. Native lore supports that it does or did exist. Some might account for racial memory because the people actually do have a record with another human species, but that does not cover the sightings by tourists. Something is there. Any basic search will find hundreds of sightings. Most are misidentified in nature, but how many are unknown? How many of them are out there? And how many are still too much to ignore?